Lila Harper, at 30, was a force of nature behind the anchor desk of New York's top-rated news channel, her sharp wit and unrelenting questions carving her a reputation as the city's youngest primetime star. Her short brown hair framed a face that could shift from warm to piercing in a heartbeat, and her half-smirk was as much a trademark as her incisive commentary. She'd built her career on holding the powerful accountable, her broadcasts a blend of charm and confrontation that kept viewers glued to their screens. Tonight, though, was different. Thupper Senator John Neely Kennedy, the Louisiana politician known for his folksy quips and conservative fire, was set to appear live. Lila had spent days preparing, her desk littered with notes on Kennedy's voting record, his colorful speeches, and his knack for dodging tough questions with a grin and a proverb. She saw him as a caricature of American politics, a man who leaned into his southern drawl and populist charm to mask a lack of substance. As the studio lights burned hot and the countdown clock ticked, Lila adjusted her earpiece, her producer's voice crackling through. "Lila, this is big. Ratings are already spiking. Keep it sharp, but don't lose them." She nodded, her eyes locking onto the camera. The teleprompter flashed. Kennedy interview in 30 seconds. A ripple of anticipation ran through the control room. Lila leaned back in her chair, her signature smirk curling. "Up next," she said, her voice smooth as velvet, the senator who'd rather spin a yarn than a policy. "Stay tuned." Laughter erupted from the studio crew, a few technicians stifling grins. She knew the jab would land with her audience, the urban viewers who saw Kennedy as a relic of a bygone era. But beneath her confidence, a flicker of unease stirred. She'd faced governors, CEOs, even foreign diplomats. But Kennedy was a wild card. His ability to charm and deflect made him slippery, and Lila was determined to pin him down. The screen split, and there he was, John Neely Kennedy, his silver hair neatly combed, his suit a shade too formal for his usual down-home persona. He sat in a modest office, a single lamp casting a warm glow over a wooden desk. No flags, no grand backdrop, just a man with a faint smile and eyes that seemed to see right through the camera. "Good evening, Senator Kennedy," Lila said, her tone professional but edged with challenge. "Good evening, Lila," he replied, his Louisiana drawl soft but deliberate. "Thanks for having me." His calm caught her off guard. She'd expected the bombast of his rally speeches, the quick-witted deflections he was famous for. Instead, he seemed almost subdued, his hands folded casually on the desk. Lila raised an eyebrow, her instincts sharpening. "You've been making waves again, Senator," she began, leaning forward. Another speech railing against Washington elites, more sound bites about common sense values. "Some say it's all talk, no action. Care to respond?" Her words were a gauntlet designed to provoke. The control room held its breath. Kennedy chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that wasn't quite amusement. "Well, Lila, I reckon I do talk a fair bit," he said, his eyes twinkling. "But tonight, I ain't here to argue about speeches or elites. I'd like to tell you about someone I met last week." Lila blinked, her carefully crafted script derailed. "Someone you met?" she repeated, her tone skeptical. "Not tax reform or healthcare?" Kennedy shook his head, his smile steady. "Nope. A woman named Clara Monroe from Baton Rouge. She's raising her boy alone, works 2 jobs, and her son's got a condition that keeps him in and out of hospitals. Yet she's got this light in her eyes, Lila." She's still smiling. The studio fell silent. Lila's producer hissed in her earpiece, "Push him back to policy." But Lila hesitated, her mind snagging on Clara's story. It reminded her of someone her sister Sarah, who'd raised her son alone while battling illness, always with a stubborn optimism that Lila had never understood. She shook off the thought, refocusing. "That's a touching story, Senator," she said, her voice cool. "But what does it have to do with your record? People want answers, not anecdotes." Kennedy tilted his head, studying her. "Maybe they do," he said, "but sometimes the answers ain't in a bill or a vote. They're in people like Clara, who keep going when life's unfair. She taught me something about grit, and I'm betting you know a thing or two about that yourself." Lila's smirk faltered. His words felt personal, like he'd seen past her polished exterior. She pressed on, determined to regain control. "Grit's one thing, Senator, but your critics say you dodge the hard questions with stories like this. Let's talk about your vote against the healthcare expansion last year. How do you justify that to someone like Clara?" Her question was sharp, meant to corner him. Kennedy nodded, unfazed. "Fair question," he said. "I voted against it because I thought it'd balloon costs without fixing the root problems. But I ain't here to rehash votes. Clara didn't ask me about bills. She asked me to keep fighting for folks like her, and that's what I'm trying to do, even if I don't always get it right. Lila's jaw tightened. He was slipping through her fingers, turning her attack into a conversation. The control room buzzed, her producer urging, "Hit him harder!" But Lila felt a strange pull. Kennedy wasn't fighting back the way she'd expected. He wasn't dismissing her or grandstanding. Hannah was just talking. About a woman who sounded too much like Sarah, whose memory Lila had buried under years of ambition and anger. "You're good at this, Senator," she said, her tone half admiring, half accusing, deflecting with a story. "But let's be real. Your base loves the rhetoric, not the results. Why should viewers trust you're not just playing to the crowd?" Kennedy leaned forward, his eyes locking with hers through the screen. "Lila, I ain't perfect. I've said things that sounded better in my head than they did out loud. But I'm not here to play to anybody. I'm here because Clara reminded me why I got into this mess in the first place, to give a voice to folks who don't get heard. And I think you get that, even if you don't want to admit it." Lila's breath caught. His words stung, not because they were harsh, but because they were true. She'd spent years amplifying her own voice, chasing ratings and recognition. But had she ever really listened? The thought unnerved her, and she pushed it aside, forcing a smile. "Well, Senator, you've got the floor," she said, her voice steady but less certain. "Tell me more about Clara." Kennedy's face softened. "Clara's boy, Tommy, he's 10. Got a rare disorder, needs constant care. Clara works nights at a diner, days at a warehouse, and still finds time to read to him. She told me, 'Senator, I don't need pity, I need people to see us.' That stuck with me, Lila. She ain't asking for a handout, just a chance to be seen." Lila nodded, her mind drifting again to Sarah. Her sister had been the same, never complaining, always finding joy in small moments with her son, even when the world seemed stacked against her. Lila had admired it but never understood it. She'd been too busy building her career, too angry at the unfairness of Sarah's struggles to see her strength. Now, Kennedy's words were pulling those memories to the surface, and Lila didn't like it. "That's compelling," she said, her tone clipped. "But let's not pretend one story fixes systemic issues. Your party's been criticized for cutting programs that help people like Clara. How do you square that?" Kennedy sighed, not in frustration, but in acknowledgement. "You're right, it don't fix everything. But I'm trying to push for better jobs, lower costs, things that give folks like Clara a real shot. I don't always agree with my party, Lila. Sometimes I'm as frustrated as you are." His honesty disarmed her. She'd expected a defense, not an admission. The teleprompter flashed. "Commercial break in 60 seconds. Lila glanced at it, then back at Kennedy. "You're surprising me, Senator," she admitted, her guard slipping. "I thought you'd come out swinging." He grinned, a spark of his usual mischief returning. "Oh, I can swing if you want, but I'd rather talk about something that matters. Like why you laughed when you introduced me." Lila froze. The control room went silent. Her producer's voice hissed, "Wrap it up," but Lila couldn't. Kennedy's question hung in the air, and for the first time that night, she felt exposed. "I laughed because it's what people expect," she said, her voice quieter. "You're an easy target." Kennedy's smile faded, replaced by something gentler. "Maybe, but I think there's more to it, something heavier. I've seen that laugh before, Lila. It ain't just about me." The screen cut to commercial, leaving Lila staring at her own reflection in the monitor. Her hands trembled slightly, and she sipped water to steady herself. Her assistant, hovering nearby, whispered, "You okay?" Lila nodded, but she wasn't sure. Kennedy had turned her script upside down, and worse, he'd seen something in her she'd spent years hiding. As the break ended, Lila took a deep breath. The cameras would roll again, and she had to decide keep attacking or let this strange, unexpected conversation unfold. For the first time in her career, Lila Harper wasn't sure what came next. The studio lights snapped back on, their glare pulling Lila Harper out of the haze left by the commercial break. Her hands still gripped the edge of her desk. The memory of Senator John Neely Kennedy's piercing question, "Why you laughed when you introduced malingering like a bruise." The control room was a flurry of hushed voices, her producer barking through her earpiece, "Lila, keep it together, push him on policy now. This is your chance." But Lila's carefully rehearsed script felt useless, scattered like leaves in a storm. Kennedy's story about Clara Monroe, the single mother from Baton Rouge, had stirred something in her, a memory of her sister Sarah, whose life had mirrored Clara's in ways Lila had tried to forget. Sarah, who'd raised her son alone, who'd faced illness with a smile. who died 3 years ago while Lila was too busy chasing headlines to say goodbye. The teleprompter flashed. Resume in 10 seconds. Lila straightened, forcing her face into its familiar mask of confidence. The camera's red light blinked on, and she met Kennedy's gaze through the split screen. He hadn't moved, his silver hair catching the soft light of his office lamp, his expression calm but expectant. "Welcome back," Lila said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We're here with Senator John Neely Kennedy, who's taken us on an unexpected detour tonight. Senator, you mentioned Clara Monroe, a woman you say taught you about grit, but let's shift gears. What's the one thing you'd say to someone watching who feels forgotten by people like you in Washington?" It was a loaded question, meant to steer him back to politics, to the territory where Lila felt in control. Kennedy leaned back, his fingers drumming lightly on his desk. "That's a good one, Lila," he said, his drawl slow and deliberate. "I'd tell him I see him, even if I don't always get it right. And I'd tell him about someone who made me see clearer. Not Clara this time, but a woman named Sarah Harper." Lila's breath caught, her heart lurching at the sound of her sister's name. The control room went silent, her producer's voice replaced by a faint, static hum. "Sarah Harper?" Lila repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Kennedy nodded, his eyes softening. "Your sister, if I ain't mistaken, I met her years back, when I was Louisiana's treasurer. She wrote me a letter, thank you note for a program that helped cover her boy's medical bills. Strong woman, Lila, had a fire in her, just like you." Lila's hands trembled, her notes forgotten. Sarah had never mentioned writing to a politician, never hinted at any connection to Kennedy. The studio felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the world had shrunk to the space between her and the screen. "Why bring her up now?" Lila asked, her tone sharper than intended, a mix of suspicion and dread. Kennedy reached for something off-screen, producing a folded piece of paper, its edges yellowed with age. "Because of this," he said, Sarah's letter. "Most of it was about her son, her life, but there was a part for you. She asked me to pass it on if I ever got the chance. Took me a while to find it again, but here we are." Lila's mind raced. A letter? From Sarah? The sister she'd argued with, distanced herself from, the sister whose death had left a hole Lila filled with work and rage? Her producer's voice crackled back. "Lila, stay on track. Don't let him derail you." But Lila couldn't focus. "You expect me to believe you just happen to have this?" she said, her voice laced with skepticism. Kennedy's smile was gentle, not defensive. "I don't expect you to believe anything, Lila, but I'm holding it right here. You want me to read it, or you want to do it?" The question hung heavy, a challenge wrapped in kindness. Lila's throat tightened. Reading it meant opening a wound on live television, in front of millions. Ignoring it meant betraying Sarah's memory. "Send it to the studio," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her chest. "I'll read it." Kennedy nodded, and within moments, a digital copy arrived on Lila's tablet, the original still in his hand. Her fingers hovered over the screen, then tapped it open. Sarah's handwriting, familiar yet achingly distant, filled the page. Lila's voice wavered as she began. "Dear Senator Kennedy, thank you for the program that's helping my son Ethan. It's given us breathing room, something I never thought I'd have again. I'm writing because I believe in second chances, even for folks who don't see eye to eye, like my sister Lila." Lila paused, her eyes stinging. The studio was dead silent, the crew frozen, the nation watching. She continued, her voice softer. "Lila's got a heart bigger than she lets on, but she's angry at the world, at me, at things she can't fix. I don't blame her. Life's been hard. But I hope one day she finds peace, the kind that lets you love without hurting. If you ever meet her, tell her I believe in her, always." Lila's voice broke on the last word, a single tear slipping down her cheek. She folded the tablet shut, unable to look at Kennedy or the camera. The control room was a void, her producer silent for once. Kennedy's voice cut through, gentle but steady. "She was proud of you, Lila. Said you were going to change the world with that voice of yours." Lila laughed, a brittle sound. "Proud? I wasn't there for her, Senator. I was too busy proving myself, fighting battles that didn't matter." Her admission hung raw in the air, unscripted and unguarded. Kennedy tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "Maybe you weren't there then, but you're here now. And Sarah's words are reaching you, reaching a lot of folks tonight." Lila wiped her cheek, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Why do this on my show?" she asked, her voice raw. "Why not send it privately?" Kennedy's eyes held hers, unflinching. "Because sometimes the truth needs a stage. Not for me, not for politics, but for you. And for everyone out there carrying something heavy. Lila's mind spun. She'd come to dismantle Kennedy, to expose his rhetoric as hollow, but he'd turned the tables, not with cunning, but with something she couldn't name: empathy, maybe, or honesty. "You don't know me," she said, almost a whisper. "Maybe not," Kennedy replied, "but I know pain when I see it. Lost a friend to cancer a while back. Made me realize we spend too much time fighting when we could be listening." Sarah's letter reminded me of that. Lila's chest tightened. She'd spent years hiding her pain behind sharp questions and sharper smiles. But Kennedy had seen through it, and now the world had too. The teleprompter flashed, "Commercial in 30 seconds." Her producer's voice returned, urgent. "Lila, wrap it up. Keep it professional." But Lila didn't want to wrap it up. She wanted answers, not from Kennedy, but from herself. "So what now, Senator?" she asked, her voice steadier but still raw. "You drop this bombshell and expect me to just move on?" Kennedy chuckled, a warm sound that cut through the tension. "I don't expect anything, Lila, but I'm guessing you're going to carry that letter with you, and it's going to make you think, maybe even make you listen a little harder." Lila nodded, almost against her will. "Maybe," she said, her eyes flicking to the tablet, to Sarah's words. "But don't think this gets you off the hook. I've still got questions." Kennedy's grin returned, a spark of his usual mischief. "I'd be disappointed if you didn't." The screen cut to commercial, and Lila slumped in her chair, the weight of the moment crashing over her. Her assistant rushed over, whispering, "Lila, you okay?" She shook her head, then nodded, unsure. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely audible. The crew bustled around her, but Lila felt alone, Sarah's letter burning in her mind. Kennedy had done more than surprise. He'd forced her to face a truth she'd buried, and she wasn't sure whether to thank him or hate him for it. As the break ticked down, Lila took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. The cameras would roll again, and whatever came next, she wouldn't hide from it. Not anymore. The studio lights dimmed as the broadcast ended, leaving Leela Harper alone at her anchor desk, the weight of Sarah's letter still heavy in her hands. The tablet screen had gone dark, but her sister's words echoed in her mind. "I hope one day she finds peace, the kind that lets you love without hurting." Lila's fingers traced the edge of the device, her heart caught between gratitude and regret. Senator John Neely Kennedy had logged off quietly, his parting words, "I'm guessing you're going to carry that letter with you," lingering like a challenge. The control room was emptying, technicians packing up, her producer already on the phone with network executives, no doubt dissecting the night's ratings spike. Her assistant Mia approached cautiously, her voice soft. "Lila, you need anything? Water? A cab?" Lila shook her head, managing a faint smile. "I'm okay, Mia. Just need a minute." But she wasn't okay. The interview had stripped her bare, exposing a grief she'd buried under years of ambition and sharp-witted takedowns. Sarah's letter had cracked something open, and Lila wasn't sure how to close either if she even wanted to. She slipped the tablet into her bag, grabbed her coat, and stepped into the chilly New York night. The city buzzed around her, but for once, Lila didn't feel part of its rhythm. She pulled out her phone, her thumb hovering over her mother's contact. They hadn't spoken in months, not since a tense Christmas dinner where Lila had dodged questions about Sarah. "Now," she pressed call. "Lila?" Her mother's voice was tentative, surprised. "Mom," Lila said, her throat tight. "I read Sarah's letter. On air. I'm sorry I didn't call sooner." Silence stretched, then a soft sob. "Oh, honey," her mother whispered. "She always knew you'd find your way back." The next morning, Lila woke to a flood of notifications. Headlines screamed across the internet. Anchor's emotional breakdown goes viral. Kennedy's surprise letter stuns newsroom. Social media was a storm of reactions. Some praised the raw humanity of the moment. Others called it a staged ploy, accusing Kennedy of manipulating the narrative. Lila scrolled through the noise, her coffee growing cold. A message from a viewer caught her eye. "I lost my brother last year. Your tears made me feel less alone. Thank you." It was one of dozens, each one a reminder that her vulnerability had reached people in ways her usual fire never had. But the cynicism online stung too. Was Kennedy's gesture genuine, or had he played her for political points? Lila didn't know, and the uncertainty gnawed at her. She opened her laptop, intending to draft a statement for the network, but her fingers hesitated. Instead, she began typing something else, a letter to Sarah. "I was angry for so long," she wrote. "At you, at myself, at the world for taking you. I thought being loud made me strong, but you were right. Peace is harder, and I'm trying." The words poured out, unpolished but honest, and when she finished, Lila felt lighter, as if she'd loosened a knot in her chest. She saved the file, unsure if she'd ever share it, but certain it was a start. At the studio, Lila's producer, Greg, was ecstatic. "You're trending everywhere," he said, waving his phone. "We're booking follow-up pundits, psychologists, even a senator who wants to weigh in. This is gold, Lila." But Lila shook her head, her voice firm. "No pundits, no spin." "I want to do something different," Greg frowned. "Different how?" Lila took a breath, an idea forming. "I want to start a campaign. Call it Letters of Peace. Ask people to write letters about loss, forgiveness, hope. We'll share them on air, online, wherever. Real stories, not debates." Greg looked skeptical. "You sure? Our audience loves the fireworks." Lila's jaw set. "They'll love this too if we do it right." She spent the day sketching out the campaign, her team reluctantly on board. By evening, the network's website had a dedicated page, and Lila recorded a short promo, her voice steady but warm. "Last night, a letter changed me," she said to the camera. "Now I'm asking you to write one. To someone you've lost, someone you've hurt, or even yourself. Let's find peace together." The response was immediate. Letters poured in, handwritten, typed. Some barely a paragraph, others pages long. A child wrote to her late grandmother, a veteran to a fallen comrade, a mother to the son she'd estranged. Lila read each one, her eyes burning with tears and pride. The first letter she shared on air was from a nurse in Ohio, who wrote to her abusive father, forgiving him not for his sake but for her own. Lila's voice cracked as she read, but she didn't hide it. The audience responded, ratings holding steady, then climbing as the campaign gained traction. Schools adopted it, churches shared it, and social media lit up with Letters of Peace. One evening, a letter arrived anonymously, its tone familiar. "To the man I was," it began. "You thought talking loud made you right, but listening showed you truth. Keep learning." Lila knew it was Kennedy Shea, recognized his cadence, his quiet humor. She read it live, her voice steady, and the studio fell silent, not in shock but in reflection. Off air, she emailed his office, a simple message. "Thank you, I didn't expect this." His reply was brief. "Neither did I. Keep shining." Lila's show began to change. She still held leaders accountable, but her questions grew less combative, more curious. She invited everyday people, teachers, farmers, parents to share their stories, weaving their letters into segments that felt less like news and more like conversations. The shift wasn't easy. Some viewers missed her old fire, and ratings dipped briefly, but a new audience emerged, one hungry for connection over confrontation. Months later, an invitation arrived from Kennedy's staff. He was hosting a community event in Baton Rouge, honoring single mothers like Clara Monroe. Would Lila speak? She hesitated. Was this politics, a photo op? But the memory of Sarah's letter, of Kennedy's unexpected kindness, pushed her to accept. She flew to Louisiana, nerves jangling as she stepped into a small community center packed with families. Kennedy greeted her warmly, his suit swapped for a simple button-down, his drawl as easy as ever. "Didn't think you'd come," he said, grinning. "Didn't think I would either," Lila admitted. On stage, she spoke not as an anchor but as a sister, a daughter, a woman learning to heal. "I used to think strength was being the loudest," she said, her voice clear. "But my sister taught me it's in the quiet moments, writing a letter, forgiving a hurt, seeing someone's heart." The crowd, many single mothers themselves, clapped, some wiping tears. Afterward, Kennedy handed her a small gift, a leather-bound notebook, engraved with, "Your voice is light." "For your next letter," he said. Lila smiled, her guard down. "You're full of surprises, Senator," he chuckled. "Gotta keep you on your toes." Back in New York, Lila placed the notebook beside Sarah's letter, now framed on her desk. Each night, she ended her show with a new letter from the campaign, her voice a blend of strength and softness. One evening, she read her own, written to Sarah, her words simple but raw. "I'm still angry sometimes, but I'm learning to love without hurting. Thank you for believing in me." The screen faded not to black but to a soft white, a nod to the light she'd found. Lila's life changed too. She visited her mother weekly, their conversations no longer strained. She met her nephew, Ethan, now 7, and saw Sarah in his shy smile. The campaign grew, touching lives she'd never imagined, from a prisoner who wrote to his victim to a teenager who forgave herself for surviving when her friend didn't. Lila's inbox overflowed with gratitude, but one message stood out, from a single mother like Clara. Your show made my daughter ask about her dad. We're talking again. That's everything. Lila closed her laptop, her heart full. She'd spent years chasing applause, but this connection, healing, was what Sarah had meant by peace. And for the first time, Lila felt she was living up to her sister's faith.